We are here today to do the 2022 budget review. I know it is in February, but our budgets were not finalized till the beginning of January, and we had to get it out to all the directors and everyone else who's responsible for managing the budget. So now I'm here to present to you kind of what our plan is for 2022. We're going to start off with a little recap for 2022. Our budgeted goals this year, where did you go? Disappeared. Wants me to stay now.
Probably not to leave.
Works nice until it doesn't, yeah. I'm not sure if kicking it's gonna work. Technology's great until it's not. All right, let's go back up now and say your prayers. All right, revenue for the year. We are projected to do about $33 million in revenue for 2022. As if you've listened to me speak before, you will hear me say that labor is our single greatest expense. And that holds true for this year as well, with our labor coming in around $21 million. Our other expenses, this includes general and administrative expenses, maintenance, environmental services or housekeeping, plant, dining, and all other departmental expense, comes in around $12 million for the year, which makes our total expenses about $32 million. That brings our net operating income just under $1 million, or at $862,000 for the year, with a margin of 2.6. For those of you that were here during the Brookdale days, our margins sat around anywhere from 12 to 20%. Margins are down with LCS, because if you remember, we were owned by Brookdale, we are managed by LCS, so management fees counts as an expense now because it's actually paid out to another company. So where it used to be considered an intercompany reclass, it's now a payment that goes out to a third party. And that does impact our net operating margin. When we look at our occupancy, in 2020 we ended at 288. In 2021 we ended at 272.5. So the first part of 2021, we did see a dip in our occupancy, but we started to kind of maintain in the third and fourth quarter. In 2022 for independent living, we're expected to be at 274.9. And for those of you that are new to this presentation, the reason why we have a 0.5 or 0.9 occupancy rate is because we count the number of days that an apartment is under contract. So if an apartment is under contract 15 days in a 30-day month, it's considered a 0.5 census number. In assisted living, we were at 2020 at 63. 2021, we came in at 49.8. We were still very hampered by the pandemic. In the first quarter alone, we lost a significant number of assisted living residents due to death and move-outs to be closer to family, and we weren't able to recover as quickly as we had hoped. However, that being said, we expect to end this year at 56.5, or a net gain of 6.6 residents over in assisted living, which is an increase of about 13%. In memory care, we started at 41.4. Last year, we were able to maintain our census and we ended at 42.4. This year, our projections are to be at 38.8. The good news on memory care, if you've listened to Brian's updates, is we're currently at 47. So we're already beating our year-end projections. Skilled nursing is probably where the labor market has hit us the most. So with skilled nursing, we have certain nurse to patient ratios that have to be met, and these are state requirements. So if they're not met, they put us under moratorium where we cannot accept admissions, or we have to make sure that our census does not exceed that which we can staff. So as a result, prior to the pandemic, we ran about 108 residents in skilled nursing at a time. Last year, in 2020, we ran at 85.3. Last year, we did see an increase of 92.1. And this year, we expect it to increase as well at 100. We are doing many things for staffing that I'll go over a little bit later in the presentation, but that increase in census is solely driven by staffing requirements. We are expected to go up year over year by 8 residents in skilled nursing, so that's an 8.6% increase. So if we look at occupancy in total, we ended last year with an average occupancy of 45.8 or 456.8 residents, and we're expected to end this year at 470.2 residents, which is an increase of 13.4 year over year. And that will be nice to see. As for those of you that were with us prior to the pandemic definitely slowed down our net occupancy adds, and we actually lost some ground. So now we are on the rebuilding. If you look at what we're expected to do as far as our unit occupancy percentage, we ended last year fully occupied at 69.2% of our capacity. We are expected to end this year at 73% of our capacity, and that's an increase of 3.8 points on our occupancy. And as I stated, if you look at memory care, where we're showing the decline, we're expecting memory care to blow that number away. And if we stay where we are today, we'll beat it by 10 for the year. So we'll actually increase our occupancy even more. This is specific only to IL. So one of the things I always get asked about is, what does our attrition look like in IL? You all see people move out, and you see people move in. And so what I've done is kind of a running total of what it looks like for our move-ins and our move-outs. Our attrition rate is essentially our move-outs divided by our beginning census number. And if you look in 18 and 19 and 20, our attrition rate was well over 20%, to a high of 25%. We kind of did an analysis of what was driving a higher attrition. Then we hit the pandemic. So that kind of slowed, unfortunately, our ends. If you look in 2020, we only sold 29 units. And that's because people were very reluctant to move in 2020 when everything was locked down. In 2022, we had 42 sales in independent living. And what a sale is, for definition, is the day that they financially close on the contract. So they could close on the contract in September, they may not move until January. So you may not see them for 3 months, but we count it when the contract is closed. In 2022, we are expected to jump by an additional 10 closings to put us back up to our 2019 high and have 52 closes. We are expecting our attrition to go down. We are seeing fewer transfers over to higher level of care, and our largest 2 move-out reasons, which we'll go over in just a minute, is transfer to a high level of care and deceased. So the fewer that go to AL memory care, while it is necessary at times, the more stable that our occupancy becomes. And so we do expect that attrition to decrease this year, and we do believe that's a doable number. So far, year to date through February, we are actually below our expected move-outs, which means if we keep on track for the rest of the year, we should see that reduced attrition that we're anticipating. When we look at last year's move-outs, one of the things I always look at is, why did they move? One of the things we want to see is we want to see people going through our transition. So we want to see them taking advantage of the continuum of care. And similar to 2020, our highest reason for move-outs were people that were transferring to a continuum of care. So they'd either transfer to the assisted living, to memory care, or to skilled nursing. Our second reason last year, and these 2 reasons flip-flopped. So in 2020, with the pandemic, our second highest move-out reason was moving closer to family. In 2021, our second highest move-out reason was people being deceased. So,
people being what?
Deceased, people passing away.
Got it.
Our third highest move-out reason was people moving closer to family. And that's still something we struggle with. And you all will have that decision to make one day, especially married couples, when one of the spouse passes away and your kids are asking you to move closer. And your contract has many benefits, and if you ever want to go over them, please let us know. And let your children know kind of what your benefits in your contract provide for you, because a lot of times there's not that understanding, and parents move closer to their children without being able to explain what those benefits are. And then the last reason we had were people that transferred to an external ALF, and those are people that transferred to be closer to family. So they needed a higher level of care, and rather than going to our ALF, they decided to move out of town to be closer to their family and go to an ALF, either out of the city or out of the state. When we look at our budgeted revenue, we break it down into 5 different categories. The first is independent living. We are expected to have $13.1 million in independent living, which is an increase of 5.3% over last year, or an incremental $659,000. That's a huge increase. As you know, we get increased revenue from 2 reasons: move-ins or change in occupancy, and our rate increase. So when our move-in and our move-outs are pretty close, that does help us depending on our apartment mix. And then if you remember or recall, your rate increase happens in September, so we see the bulk of that benefit in the following year. In assisted living, our revenue is expected to come in at $3.9 million, or an increase of 13.6%, which equates to $464,000. And that is coming from our increase in our occupancy, as well as an increase in the rates. However, occupancy is the main driver here. When we look at memory care, because census is going down, it makes sense that revenue is going down. So one of the wins this year is we're actually going to beat the revenue number, which if you're sitting where I'm sitting is good news. Because normally I'm the one holding like the little umbrella and telling everybody why it's going to rain. So at least in memory care, I get to tell everybody why it looks sunny. Because right now we're beating our occupancy by 10, which means that we're going to beat our budgeted goals. And then when we look at skilled nursing is going to come in at $13 million. And that's about $1 million increase year over year. And that's coming in at 9.4%. Skilled nursing is a mix of change in revenue structures. There are different type of payer sources in skilled nursing. So we have Medicare, managed care, which is your insurance, Medicaid, and private pay. So between the mix of those, we expect increases to happen, and in Medicaid's case, sometimes decreases, based on the level of care that we're providing. We're also seeing our occupancy go up, and so as a function of that, our revenue would also go up. And then we have our other revenue. Other revenue consists of innovative home services. We are now doing outpatient therapy in partnership with Signature Home Care, so that's another revenue stream. And then we have interest revenue, and that's just interest on our banking accounts or our banking relationships. And as a result, we're expecting our other revenue to go up about $161,000, or an increase of 22.2%. And a lot of that is coming from innovative home services and from the launch of outpatient therapy outside of these walls with Signature Home Health. Rate increases. So everybody's fun topic. We do plan for what we expect our rate increases to be when we're going through the budget process. So over the last few years, with the exception of 2020, we did take less than the CPI plus 2%. So if you look on this graph here, the blue is the CPI plus 2%. The orange is what was actually taken on your bills. In 2021, CPI plus 2% was 7.6%. We did take a 5% rate increase. In 2022, we are budgeting an approximate 5% rate increase. But as we all know, our rate increases are dictated by the CPI. And we hold fast to doing everything by the May CPI. So this could potentially change. I'm just showing you what was budgeted. And come June, I'll be doing a presentation for all of you that want to know more about the rate increase before the notifications come out. However, this is what our projection is for this year, which is 5%. Again, timing will be September 1st of 2022, similar to prior years, with a rate notification going out to you by July 1st of 2022. What's driving the approximate 5% that we have budgeted? If you notice, our labor rates went up quite significantly. Right now, we have a couple of different pressures on our labor and wages. The first of which is legislative driven. Minimum wage is required to go up to $15 by 2026, which means that everybody is having to raise rates and wages for people that are making less than the $15 wage. It is going up incrementally. However, not that any of you are looking for a job, but if you're looking for a job today, a lot of companies have already gotten to that $15. We're not there. We can't sustain jumping all the way to 15 from where our pay scales were. But what we are doing is we are looking at where people are, what the community is doing as a whole, and where we're having issues recruiting, and we are doing wage adjustments to accommodate for that. So that's what that second bullet point is the associated wage pressures to remain competitive. We could not stay at minimum wage today and be fully staffed. We would actually be more less staffed than we are today. So we're constantly looking at entry-level employees, what their rates are, what the community's doing. Matching dollar for dollar is just not a good business practice, but what we want to do is make sure that we remain competitive. The reason why matching dollar for dollar is not a good business practice is because when we raise our wages, they raise their wages. So it just winds up doing nobody good. You have people flip-flopping from different places and you have no employee retention. So we're trying to do things to keep people here and do things to recruit new people here as well without doing a dollar for dollar match on what our competitors may or may not be doing. We also have external market pressures. If you work in healthcare, you are required to have a vaccine mandate. We take Medicaid and Medicare, and as a result right now, you have to be vaccinated in order to work here. There are some companies that are not requiring vaccinations. That impacts a lot of our frontline staff, more so in the housekeeping and in the dining world. And so that is definitely an external market pressure. That means that we need to be able to be more competitive when we're looking at those positions. And then we have the external market pressure of nurses. For those of you that watch the news, the market labor shortage is unprecedented. If you go out right now to a restaurant, a lot of times you'll see that sections are closed, and sometimes the restaurant is closed because they do not have enough people to serve the customers they have. I'm on Facebook and I got a notification through my neighborhood association that one of the restaurants that's by where I live had a 3-hour wait that day if you wanted to order food or if you wanted to come in. And that was because they were short on staff. And they posted on a Facebook and it went viral to all the neighborhoods that were around there. That is what we are facing, but we can't have a 3-hour wait. So we are trying to do things that are creative. We are trying to do things that you may not necessarily like, but we want to make sure that we have a service that we can get to you while we concentrate on getting our dining rooms back open and business back to normal. When we look at our non-wage expenses, in 2021, the inflation rate was 7%, which is one of the highest inflationary rates since the 80s. We don't expect that to continue. However, if you look at January CPI, it definitely didn't lay off in January. So we are expecting somewhere around a 4 to 5% inflationary factor for this year. If you look at what economists are predicting, they are predicting that at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, there will be a drastic fall off in inflation. And I'm really hoping they're right, because we did follow this when we were looking at our budgets. When we look at our labor costs, we have 3 things that make up our labor costs. The first are salaries and wages. And if you look, our salaries and wages are going up 13.8%. I'll go into the makeup of that a little bit later, but that's a huge jump in salaries. That's just to pay the people we have here and to recruit the open positions that we have. With salaries, as we increase our FTEs, our benefits and taxes will go up. So they're going up about $500,000 year over year, or 15.7%. And then we have what I call the necessary evil, contract labor. There is a nursing shortage everywhere. as I alluded to earlier, we have to meet certain staff requirements to keep our census numbers up. So if we can't do that internally, we are using contract labor nurses. Our goal is to have these nurses hired before the end of the year so that we don't have to use contract labor nursing, because you pay a premium price for contract labor. This is kind of a graph of what minimum wage is supposed to do in the next 6 years. So as I said before, we have to be at $15 an hour minimum wage by 2026. A lot of companies are there today. However, if you look at just what it would take if we moved everybody up about $1, which we're not gonna do, but if we moved everybody up, the impact to our wages this year would be about a 10% increase. In 2023, it would be a 9.1%. In 2024, 8.3%. In 25, 7.7% increase. And in 2026, 7.1% increase. So that's just the increase on the minimum wage. So it's pretty significant. It almost doubles from 2020, where it was $8.65, to 2026, where it's $15. So that's definitely gonna put some pressure on our wages and make our wages go up at a much more significant rate than they have in the past. And when we look at what's driving that 13% jump in our labor, the first of which is increased FTEs. So right now we are down about 42 full-time equivalents throughout the campus. So once we hire them, we're gonna go paying nothing to paying something. So that's gonna take up about 46.2% of that increase once we get fully staffed. And these are numbers compared to 2021. So when we're looking at 2021, we knew we were gonna have to ramp up staffing this year. When we look at wage adjustments, and these are things we did prior to January 1st, or actually on January 1st, is we looked at our high-risk individuals. So I've had people come to me and say, well, what are you doing for your employees that work here today? Well, on January 1st of 2022, we took a lot of those entry-level associates and we raised their wages. So they're making more on January 1st than they were on December 31st. And that was to help to retain them.
What kind of percent?
It's across the board. It depends on what the position was, because there was probably 15 different positions on different pay spans. I don't have the average on the top of my head, but it's something I could get back with you on. And then the flip side of that is 15% of that increase year over year is going to be merit increases. So March of every year, we all go through that employee review process that we all love, and we do merit increases based on your evaluation. For the wage adjustments, just so you're aware, the total dollar amount of the wage adjustments was probably around $775,000 from January 1st, year-over-year impact. So it was quite significant. And the highly impacted positions were in food services, environmental services, our home health department, and in nursing. So that is all of the positions that we are struggling to hire. They're not managers and supervisors, they're the people, the frontline associates that you all deal with every single day. When we look at our controllable expenses, if you look, we're going up 4.2%. Controllable expenses are expenses that we control here locally. So these are our departmental expenses. Our biggest increase is coming in food and beverage. It's going up 5.5%. That is going up for two reasons. One of which, as occupancy grows, so does food expense, because we're feeding more people. And then the flip side of that is we do have in there budgeted about a 5% inflationary factor. So we take our food seriously here. Our healthcare expense is going up as well. That is strictly skilled nursing expense. Some of our increases in our census year over year is coming from Medicare and managed care. When we bring in a Medicare or a managed care patient, we do get paid a higher daily rate from Medicare and managed care. However, we pay for their medications, we pay for their laboratories. It's billed through to their insurance company or to Medicare, but that's included in the rate that we receive back. So our healthcare ancillary costs are going up, and that's strictly a function of our increase in our Medicare and managed care census. Every other department is pretty much well within those guidelines of the inflationary factors. You will see some departments where it looks like we're spending less money per month. Non-utility expenses, we do not budget for major plumbing leaks. We don't budget for major roof repairs. So those are some things that happened in 2021 that we're not expecting to happen again this year. Through one reason or another, a capital investment, or we fixed the problem. We've been doing a lot of proactive plumbing repairs as we're doing UTOs. So as we're turning over a unit for a new resident and we see there's a plumbing problem, we are proactively dealing with that entire plumbing issue on that UTO, regardless of what apartments that it affects. So because we don't budget for them, when you look year over year, it does look like we're going down $24,000. And that's really due to one-time expenses that occurred in 2021. And in environmental services, in December, we had a $26,000 linen order. It's back ordered, but it's coming. And that's for new towels for the IL. So again, that's kind of a one-time expense that we don't expect to happen again. It was in the forecast. So as a result, we are seeing that year over year, expenses will go down. However, we do have the inflationary factor in there for supplies, window cleanings and such like that. The departments that are going up significantly to inflationary factors, which is assisted living and memory care, we have launched a program called Personal Solutions. So that's a program where we will actually supply any incontinence needs that the resident has. And we charge a monthly fee. We've had an increased enrollment. We expect the enrollment to increase with the census increase. So that's why it looks like those expenses are going up significantly year over year. It's tied directly to that program. It does have a revenue stream that is associated with that, but because they do not spend a lot in supplies, because they get a lot of their supplies from all their office supplies comes from G&A. Most of what they are doing is supplied by the residents, and it's mainly labor that we pay over there. It does look like we are raising our expenses significantly in those departments. Same with innovative home services. But if you add the three of them together, it really is about a $14,000 increase year over year. And if you compare that to the $6.4 million we spent last year, it's not material. When we look at our non-controllable expenses, so these are things we don't control locally. It'd be nice if we did, but we don't. Management fees we do not control locally. This is based off of our management agreement. Professional fees, these are contracted amounts for your medical deduction letters, which by the way will be in your mailboxes later today. Also our financial audit expense and our Medicare cost report expense. So those are things we have to do. We do outsource them, but we do not control what that expense is. Our utilities are kind of our utilities. So we are showing that it's going to go up year over year. When we budget our utilities, we do go into each utility and we figure out what they believe is going to be their inflationary factor or their rate increase for the year upcoming. So that's based on what was published on the FP&L site, what Charlotte County had released, what they thought they were going to do. And then for gas, we usually just trend that off of the previous year, and I Google what we think propane is gonna do year over year. So that's where we get our total utility expenses change budget year over year. Insurance and taxes are driven off of peak schedules. So most of our insurance cost, aside from the premiums, comes from claims. So it's called IBNR, which is incurred but not received. So these are outstanding claims that could potentially come against Southport where we have a reserve built. So if we pay out on those claims, that reserve already exists. And then our beloved COVID expense. It's going down year over year, and that is because in 2022, COVID will have been here 2 years, and a lot of what we are doing now is being absorbed into operating costs. So we still buy some increased PPEs if it's related specific to a COVID outbreak in the health center or here, it goes to COVID expense. If it is specific to our day-to-day operations because of new COVID protocol, it goes into operating expense. And so that's why you're seeing a decrease in COVID expense year over year. So as we look at kind of our change year over year in our 2022 budget, we are seeing that revenue is gonna go up by 2.2 million, or about 7%, and that's going across all levels of care. Labor expenses, which includes our contract labor, wages, and our benefits and taxes, is going up 14.4%, or about 2.6 million. Other expenses is going up 30,000, which is pretty flat to where it stood last year. And our net operating income is going down by 424,000. And it's going down based on those wage adjustments that we did in January 1st. So we knew it was going to go down this year, but as we looked to what we needed to invest in to make Southport Square successful, that was where we needed to put the investment. So our margin is gonna go from an actual 4.1% margin in 2021 to a 2.6% margin in 2022. So last to review is our capital budget. Our capital budget is for items that help replace infrastructure, provide renovations to existing things that we have, and then prepare apartments for new move-ins. Our capital budget this year is $7 million. This does not include something called FAD, and FAD is funds available for distribution. So PEAK has funds that are set aside for potential capital investments that are not budgeted, and based on what the need is in the properties, they distribute them accordingly throughout the year. So that does not sit in our capital budget. Right now, a lot of times I hear, well, what are we doing for new residents? So I did try and break this out. Highlighted in yellow here are all renovations that are happening to the property here to benefit the residents that live here. And that equates to about $2.9 million for the year. Right now, what we have slated is the Gables East renovation to replace the AC in the pool building. We're gonna refresh memory care flooring. We're gonna renovate the salon in the village, the arts and crafts in the village. We are going to purchase outdoor furniture. That one I particularly like. And get rid of this wicker furniture and upgrade the furniture on the outside. And then we're gonna renovate the fitness center. So those are all projects that we have slated for this year to help renovate the property that we have today for the residents that live here. 2.1 million of our capital budget is going to infrastructure. So this is the stuff you never see, but we have to do. It's the non-fun stuff, like we have to modify the service elevator. You're welcome. I know you all are really excited about that one, but you know, there's things we have to do that unfortunately we have to do. We have to replace the roofing at the Harbor Health Kitchen. We are putting in a new nurse call, fire and life safety upgrade in the health center. So we put a new one in Southport Square, paid for it last year. For independent living, we are upgrading the health centers as well this year. We are putting in a new phone system. We are replacing the irrigation pump. So I know this is the stuff that doesn't exactly make you all like jump up for joy, but it's stuff that helps make this place run and stay as beautiful as it is every day that you're here. The rest of the funds, are $1.9 million, are used for apartment upgrades. So as you all know, when you all moved in, we UTO apartments when new residents move in. So that $1.9 million is reserved to upgrade those apartments and create what we call make-readies. Make-readies are apartments that are ready for residents to move in when they sign their contract. So this way, instead of waiting for a build to happen after they sign the contract, they're signing the contract on an already built unit so they can move in quicker. And that's really where we're headed towards 2022, is to get people in here quicker, to sell them on the apartments that we have, to upgrade the units that are empty. And so this way, we can build our census quicker. So I am now open to any questions you might have. Yes?
The skilled nursing occupancy level, my impression was you cut back the number of beds to about 100. Is that about right?
So the question was, did we cut back the number of beds in skilled nursing? The answer is yes. We have done a temporary reduction right now with ACA. So we converted a lot of our semi-private rooms that were for short-term rehab into private rooms. So we are gonna grow occupancy to 100, but our capacity sits at 104 with that reduction.
So then your plan for the year would be the occupancy level there would approach 100%.
Our occupancy, on some months, it will approach 100%, which is very similar to post-COVID. It would have done that in 2021 had we had the appropriate staffing levels, but unfortunately, even contract agencies are limited to what they can provide us. So yes, we will approach close to full on a few months, typically during season. Yes, sir.
What I didn't see up there was the gazebo. Where's the funding for the gazebo coming from?
So the question was, he did not see up there the gazebo, where's the funding come from? That funding came from the 2021 capital budget. So that gazebo has been paid for, and it is being installed, I believe, in the next few weeks. So we paid the vendor because they had to move through and do permitting, and so that came out of the 2021 capital budget. Yes, sir.
Is the same thing true for the pool pavers and the pool resurfacing? Is that also last year's budget?
So the question is the same thing true for the pool and the pool pavers? Yes. And that's because we had to get everything on order because of the supply and demand issues. We knew it would cut into 2022, but we went ahead and paid for the pavers and such before they came in. So yes, it does apply to the pool as well. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned about the cost for renovations for new move-ins. Maybe there's something that I'm not seeing, but I know that we had to pay for the flooring, most other things that are in there. What was the expense that you're talking about for new move-ins?
So for the capital costs for new move-ins, the question was, I know we paid for some things when we moved in. We provide everything at a standard level. So there's a standard flooring, there's standard appliances. Flooring is typically tile and carpet. And if anyone wanted an upgrade, so if they want vinyl flooring, if they want all tile, the resident does pay for that. Because there is a life to that flooring or a life to any of the upgrades, it does go through capital and it is amortized. The payments also go through capital and we earn that through the life of the asset as well. So it does come out of that capital budget and it's then offset by any payments that the resident may make. So both are amortized over the life of that asset. Yes?
In 2020, I think you anticipated a possible audit, and Brian informed me because of my council position for 2020 that I might be contacted. So I wasn't, and I'm not complaining, okay? And so, do you have any comment about that audit that you did?
So in 2020, the question is, we were expecting an audit, and Mr. Case was the then president and was expecting to be contacted. The audit did occur. The audit was with the OIR, or the Office of Insurance Regulation. They were years behind in their audit process. So we are supposed to be audited every 3 years by the Office of Insurance Regulation. They had not done an audit here in over 6 years. So, and we were not the only property. There were many properties throughout Florida that they had not been to in years. So they did what was called a desk audit. So the desk audit, essentially they reached out to us, asked us for information to provide to them. We provided them with all of the information they asked for, and they are getting ready to close the audit. So it was definitely, I don't want to say less intrusive, but I've been through 2 OIR audits prior to that. It was definitely less time consuming than previous audits. And I believe the legislature approved for them to do so that they could catch up on the backlog. Once that backlog is caught up, then they're going to go back to what their normal audit structure looks like. So we will be audited again, most likely in 2024. You're welcome. Yes?
What is the plan for some kind of order to be associated with the dining room and the food and the presentation? I was here 5 years ago, and it isn't what it was yesterday.
So the question was, what is the plan to get the dining room back to where we were kind of 5 years ago? And I wish I could pass this off to Brian, but I'm in charge of dining now, so I have to answer. We are right now doing a serious blitz of hiring. We have 24 open positions in the dining rooms, most of which are front of the house. Because of that, we cannot open those dining rooms. We have a new chef. The new chef is working on training all of the staff that is here to meet his level of standard, and it's a pretty high level. He's working with the sous chefs as well as the normal chefs. We're looking at kind of restructuring the cooks so that we have people with experience as well as new chefs coming in, so that we have kind of a mixture instead of one kitchen with all new chefs and one kitchen with all experienced chefs. We're also having him work on consistency between both kitchens. The flip side of that on front of the house is we have gone through a serious hiring blitz. What we're finding is we have to set up maybe 10 interviews to get one person. And the 10 interviews does not even count all the people we have to call just to get those 10 interviews. So HR has been partnering with us for the last month and a half to try and do a blitz on servers so that we can get people in here to open the dining rooms. And then yesterday we went and looked at some new technology that we could potentially bring to the dining rooms that will not hurt the service, it will enhance the service that you receive. And if we can do that as well, then we'll be able to open the dining room sooner.
My perception is that there's been a reduction in the quantity and the quality of the food served at the dining room.
There has not been, our cost of food, our cost per resident day used to hover around the $5 range, which means we spend about $5 per resident per day in food. We are now north of $8. So we are not sacrificing on the cost of food. We are training on the preparation of food. You could buy very expensive food and cook it very badly. I am the prime example of that one. And you could buy normal food and cook it very well. So the chef is working with the sous chefs and the staff there to kind of elevate presentation, elevate cooking skills, teach and train. I equate this place to that Titanic. Not that we're hitting an iceberg, but you can't move a cruise ship in one switch of the wheel like you would a speedboat. A speedboat, if you want to change direction, you just go like this and the boat goes. When you do it to a cruise ship, you got to travel along a little bit before the boat finally starts turning. So we are slowly going and we're slowly turning, and our goal is that when we open up the kitchens again, you're going to see the same service and quality you saw 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. Yes.
In December, the dining rooms were open. Now they're not. What's caused the big change in such a short period of time?
Loss of staff. And loss of staff, when I say that, we were very short-staffed. We did a lot with a little. I was waiting tables, Brenda was waiting tables, Bellagio was waiting tables, and the servers that were here were working a tremendous amount of hours. We were burning out the staff that we had. We wound up losing some more. So the goal is not to burn them out, to get people in here, get them all trained properly so we can open up the correct way. Yes?
At one point in the presentation, you mentioned creativity that you have employed, and I'd like to know what you mean by that. Or creative solutions, I don't remember the exact word.
If you're talking, are you talking about the dining rooms?
No. In general, you said creative solutions that you're pursuing.
I'm not sure, honestly, I can tell you in the dining rooms, we are looking at, automated ways to expo food, which is creative, and it's gonna actually give you more time with the servers, because they don't need to leave the floor to go to the kitchen to get food. It's also gonna be used as a recruitment tool, because they don't have to carry trays. So we can bring people in who have a hard time with heavier trays. So we're being creative that way, but as far as other ways, I'm not quite sure what it was in reference to.
Okay, I've been looking at other, residences like ours, and they're doing things like partnering with training schools for kitchen, for cooking, for all kinds of different skills, so that they are helping to train the next generation of servers. Is anything like that going on within the LCS community or within this community?
So the question was, other properties are reaching out to schools that specialize either in culinary or in nursing. Yes, we have reached out to the schools, including Charlotte Technical College. We actually had a round of nurses come in here. We've talked with some of the culinary students as well. So yes, we are attempting to do that. And we are also, our HR team is also working on an internship program. That would allow us to bring people in here, train them, and hopefully retain them so that they stay at Southport Square once they get their certifications. So yes, that is something that we are looking into.
That's the type of thing I was looking for.
Okay.
No, I was just going to mention, this may not be the forum for this, but when we moved here at the beginning of 2018, you know, again, this whole story comes back up about renovating East. And this is now 2022. We haven't had any kind of communication as to when anything might possibly start. There's always a problem that, you know, the contractors, or they can't get the furniture, or, you know, when does this circus ever stop?
The money is there. It's gonna happen this year. As far as timing, I can't promise you. In 2018, it was a very different world than it is today, unfortunately. What happened with the designer is that the designer left the project and we had to go find a new design company. And the new design company is trying to find things that we don't have to wait on. And Brian had mentioned this in the last resident council. Because we pick a sample and we go to order it and they're like, oh, we have a 5-month backlog. And we really don't want that 5-month backlog. So they're trying to be a little proactive, which is taking more time to get samples that we would have readily available to us without sacrificing quality. So Gables East is going. I know he's been in touch with Phyllis Schwartz, who is the head of that committee, the decoration committee, or the design committee for Gables East. I'm not in those meetings, so I couldn't tell you other than what Brian's already communicated.
I'm on that committee also. I'm not Phyllis Schwartz, but I am on that committee, and we haven't had a meeting like for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know if there's necessarily anything for them to see at this moment from a design perspective, and that's because the design company is still going out there trying to source what we can do. And it's not just Southport Square, it is everywhere. I mean, you could probably go to Home Depot and buy a washing machine, but when you buy washing machines in bulk like we do, there are wait lists, and that's the same with construction equipment, unfortunately. You know, personally, that nice little tornado thing tore up my roof. The gentleman that owns my home is a builder, and he can't get the roofing tiles. So it's definitely not, unfortunately, just restricted to Southport Square. So we're trying to get out there and find the things that won't have us sitting here in September saying they're on order. Because, I mean, the pavers, we started the pool project 3 months ago and they're still on order. So, yes, sir.
For information purposes, Nancy and I don't know if you're aware, you probably are, there's a new senior living type facility that is opened in Northport. And we explored that, Nancy and I, for informational purposes. And as you report that they can't touch this place.
So the comment was a new facility opened up in Northport, and Southport standards are higher than that community, which is good because we look at our competitors, and that was actually one of the things we had brought up in our budget, was we knew a competitor was coming to Northport, which is closer than Shell Point, which is our other nearest competitor, so that's nice to hear. Hold on one second, Mr. Cooper. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think we'll ever get back to what was normal for our dining room, where we just went down to eat, we didn't have to make reservations, and we didn't have to fill out a daily menu?
So the question was, do I think that we're gonna go back to what was normal in the dining room prior to COVID? The long answer is yes. And I say it's the long answer, because we were trying to open it and do it in such a way that it will stay open. So it may be a phased opening, it may be we start with reservations and then we move to reservations not being required, but the long answer to that is yes. I spend a couple hours a day just working and planning with Brenda to see what we can do to get them opened, because we don't want to keep them closed. Yes, sir.
I'm wondering about the vinyl cleanings of the 9 vinyls. We've been waiting, ever since I moved in, on the waiting list, and it never happens. Are you able to get those vinyls cleaned?
So the question is, what's going on with vinyl cleanings? Olga has just started, and I really have only had 1 or 2 meetings with her. I do know that she is working on a plan to get those vinyl cleanings caught up. I couldn't give you specifics of what that plan is, but that was actually one of the things that was on her top priority list to get done when she started here. So she is looking into and addressing ways that we can get the vinyl cleanings cleaned up. Yes.
I know it's hard hiring people to work like the dining room, but what is being done by Southport Square to retain the people we do have?
So the question is, what's being done to retain the people that we have working in the dining rooms? The first of which you probably don't want to hear is closing the dining rooms to enable them to not be so overtaxed. As I said before, we are looking into an automated way to expo food by way of a robot. We actually went to another senior living CCRC yesterday, Brenda, Brian, myself, and Steve, to see it in action. The idea of that robot is not to replace your server. The idea of that robot is to keep the servers on the floor. So this way, they're able to serve the residents that are there, refresh the glasses and the drinks, without having to keep going back and forth to the kitchen. So it'll keep them on the floor, being able to serve better. So once we get to that staffing level with the help of technology, and the server will be able to open, but to retain them now, we are really trying to keep them engaged. We are talking with the teenagers, because there's a lot of things that they might not agree upon, because we're running a business and a lot of them it's their first job. So working with them to understand why rules are in place. So there's a lot of things and different approaches that we're trying right now to keep that staff.
Well, it sounded like you answered for new employees, trying to get them in here. The ones we do have, what specifically
We are
is Southport
talking to
doing?
them.
Pardon?
We are talking to them. So one of the things that I have done, and I've had Brenda do, is look at what's called a stay interview. And a stay interview is kind of a way of connecting with your associates to see what keeps them here, and making sure we can tap into that so that we can keep them happy. The other thing that I'm trying to impart on the servers by talking with them, and Brenda as well, is it's okay to smile and have fun when you work. When I working up in the dining rooms was a little bit of eye-opening, because they were all so afraid to make a mistake. And I looked at them, I'm like, it's a mistake, it happens. And believe me, if you had me as your server, you know that there's no mistakes bigger than what I did. I forgot to put order in one time, and the poor person sat there for a while. So they need to learn it's okay to make a mistake. All a mistake is learning. but they are so afraid to make a mistake that they get themselves very tense and stressed, and that's why we're seeing a lot of people leaving. So it's just educating them, and a lot of times it's because it's their first job, and that's what we're trying to do now, and trying to make working here more fun than stressful. It doesn't mean that there's not a job to do, but you could do the same job laughing as you can stressed. So that's on top of the wage adjustments, but the wage adjustments only get you so far. They have to feel invested in working here. Yes.
I think our residents have to be careful that they're very kind to these young girls in the dining room, because sometimes people just kind of ignore them and just go along, but they like to be spoken to and appreciated, and liked, and not in a grumpy way.
So the comment was that residents also need to make sure that the servers feel appreciated, and you're absolutely right. But it goes both ways. It's also training them that sometimes somebody has a bad day. We all do it, and that bad day doesn't mean that you are failing at your job. And sometimes it's, when I was up there, it was taking them aside and telling them it's okay. It's food. I mean, it's personal because it's food, but it's also food. And just take a deep breath, collect yourself, and go back out there. Because in my experience, no matter where you go, you're gonna have people that are having a bad day. And you're gonna have people that yell at you for what you think is not a good reason. But I do agree, there needs to be an awareness as well that for especially the people at night, a lot of times it's their first job and they're learning. From personal experience, my son's first day here, he's went to another job now, but his first day here, he asked somebody how their meal was, and they said I hadn't eaten yet. And I said, well, what did you say? I said, thank you, and I walked away. And honestly, that was because he had no clue what to say. So it's really training just those simple fundamentals so they feel comfortable and feel empowered to make decisions and answer questions. Yes?
I can only comment about the Gables West servers, who I happen to think are excellent, and they are consistently courteous, and they hustle, so, and they're very good. And I believe they're being told of that as well.
And you believe they're being told? You believe they're being told that they're doing a good job?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And they deserve it.
Yes. So he was commenting on the Gables West servers on how when he's there, they're always hustling and courteous and kind, and that's really, what we want to see. Yes.
Just one other comment on staff morale. I moved in here a year ago, February, and it was extraordinary the number of staff who would tell me they would not work anyplace else. They love working here. I have not heard that comment in 6 months, and it's overwhelming grumbling among the staff. We really need to do something.
So we do have some things in the works as far as staff appreciation goes. We used to be very good at bringing the staff together, and COVID happened and we could not bring them all together. So that's actually being relaunched this year as part of an initiative. So if you had come in 2020, that was coming off a year in 2019 where we made sure every quarter we had an associate meeting. We educated them, we let them have a little fun, we fed them, and we're gonna go back to that this year. With COVID restrictions being a little reduced, we still will have to wear our masks, but at least we can get together and gather, and that's something we just weren't able to do in 2020. So we did more one-off appreciations, but not getting everyone together and creating that interdepartmental camaraderie.
Well, it's extraordinarily important because I believe it's what set Southport Square apart from all your other competition.
Very much so, which is why we're starting it again this year. Unfortunately, COVID's kind of put a wrinkle in a lot of things, and it has had a huge ripple effect. And so yes, that is on our plans for this year, to make sure that we are gathering our employees together, creating interdepartment camaraderie, creating camaraderie with residents and associates, and kind of rebuilding where we were. Yes?
One last question. Do we have a dining room manager in Gables West? I haven't seen her around lately.
We do not. So we had a dining room manager in Gables West, and she resigned this week.
Oh, wow.
So, we do not.
We don't see janitor.
Health reasons.
Well, why was she hired?
Health reasons. So, I can't elaborate beyond health reasons, but that's why she resigned. So we're back looking again. All right, if no more questions, I appreciate, oh, yes, ma'am.
Could you just go over, the rent increase for us this next year? Is that 5% thing you're saying?
Our projected monthly service fee increase as of right now is 5%. However, in June of 2022, which is just a few months away, I will be giving a final presentation on what that rate increase is going to look like.
Oh, could it go down?
Could go down, it could go up. Could go either way. If it goes up, I'm getting a plexiglass shield here. All right, well, thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.